No more questions? Okay, we ready here? Let me get things up and going. Let me get this working correctly. Need to share the screen first. And come on. Here we go. Okay, get up there. Okay, now I got everything working right. So there was a program I did a few months back about where things were setting with the current solar cycle solar cycle 25, and it wasn't real positive in there. There's a bit of information that came out in the ARL newsletter a few weeks back that basically had a interesting write-up and an interesting paper that was put together that kind of presented a whole different picture. They had a different mathematical model that they looked at, that they presented there, and they were predicting that this coming solar cycle was going to be incredibly good. I did do a little bit of investigation. I did look a little bit at the paper that they pulled all their information for. I didn't look so much at the math, but this is an entirely new way of looking at things, and I'll just say that for me, it was not proven. The proof behind it had not been repeated enough times. In other words, statistically, if you have one incident that looks interesting, well, that's interesting. If you have something that you can repeat twice, that means, well, that's a possibility. Now, if you can repeat that process at least 3 times, then something starts to become statistically significant. And what they had presented there, I never saw any proof that showed that this was something repeatable. So if you hear about something coming up, that's why I was really surprised it was even published in the ARL, and that statistically, I just didn't see anything statistically significant that showed that it was something repeatable. But if you hear something about that this solar cycle 25 is going to be a gangbuster, for now, until it becomes better proven, I would suggest that you take it with a grain of salt. But that's me speaking. You have to make up your own decision, but that's my approach to it at this time. So tonight I thought we'd look at something that trends along with kind of newer radios, newer hardware. And I thought we'd take a look at Panadapters. And Panadapters kind of go along with some of the newer technology that's coming along. So it's the usual kind of format. We're going to talk about what the heck a Panadapter is, types of Panadapters, how to use Panadapters, kinds of information that it will give you, and a few little add-ons for Panadapters. There's lots of neat little uses and add-on hardware that you can use for getting access to using a Panadapter. So the old term for Panadapter, it captures a lot of number of different kind of technologies used in ham radio on what a Panadapter might be. So we'll kind of walk through some of the different views and how it might be used or referred to in ham radio. So generally, a Panadapter is kind of look at it as another way of a real-time spectrum analyzer. It displays signals in the frequency domain rather than the time domain. So it's in the frequency domain. And that's what a spectrum analyzer does. But rather than having to cough up $2,000 or $3,000 for a good spectrum analyzer, A lot of times a good old Panadapter is built into the latest hardware, and we can also get our hands on that hardware for some pretty cheap pesos. So Panadapters usually associated with SDRs, software-defined radios. The way software-defined radios work, the information to build a Panadapter is a byproduct of how an SDR radio works. So if you have an SDR radio, as a byproduct, it just produces what you need for a Panadapter. There's many add-ons that you can buy for older radios. So if an older radio doesn't have the ability, it's not an SDR radio, there's really cheap, inexpensive ways of putting together a Panadapter for an old boat anchor type of radio. We'll talk a little bit about that. Newer transceivers pretty much have built-in Panadapters. You know, you look at that ICOM 7300. You know, that's kind of a low-end radio that's an SDR radio inside of it, and it has a built-in Panadapter built into it for a really inexpensive price. Some radios, like your good old K3, they don't really have that feature built in. K3's been around for a long time. It's an SDR under the hood, but you can buy add-on hardware that turns that into providing a Panadapter. So this is so we're going to go back in time. I'm trying to figure out how long that ICOM 7000's been around, but it's probably approaching 20 years. But at the time, it was cutting edge, and that was kind of the onset of having some way of taking a look at what is going on within a band. But you're still kind of, you know, before you had to end up taking your old tuning dial, tune it up and down the band, use your ears to see and figure out what activity there is on the band. So in the ICOM 7000, they had what was known as a band scope in there. In the bottom of the little tiny 2x2 inch display is the band scope, and you can see those little tiny blips going vertical, and that's some RF energy. This radio is not a dual band, doesn't have two receivers in it, so it means that it had to kind of hijack or share the one receiver to pull that information out. So that would give you a swath of looking at a band and show you what it could find out there for RF energy. And then you could use your good old tuning dial to tune up and down to find that energy, or to land on that energy and see what kind of a conversation is going on. Now, I'm trying to remember the ICOM 7300. It's been, is it approaching three years now that it's been out? So this guy, cost-wise, that ICOM 7000, that was something that was in that $1,000 range. The ICOM 7300, it's in that $1,000 range, pretty much the same kind of an entry point for a transceiver. So this has a nice little spectrum scope built into it. It gives you a waterfall. It also gives you a spectrum scope that shows where it can find energy. So it's really cool that here, again, with a little bit of real estate for a display, and using an SDR as the basic receiver, it's able to take and produce that kind of display. And we'll get into why it's so darn important. So here's the first 2 points that I have up there are what I feel is the major point on why a Panadapter is so important. It lets you see what the receiver is hearing. We are all visual people, so we count on being able to see things. When we see things, that communicates to our brain on what's going on. So this allows us to see what we're hearing. So it gives us a nice visual display that shows what's going on with that RF energy so we can hear things. So it also adds a significant dimension to our listening experience. So we're listening along, and at the same time, we get visual information on what we're listening to. So it helps us to better understand what we're hearing. So those two key points there are really key on the power and the importance of what a Panadapter provides us. So the Panadapter is really cool because it provides us a slice of a band. You know, some Panadapters can capture a whole lot of RF energy or a long bandwidth. Some of them can only capture a small amount, but it will capture a slice out of a band and it will display that information for you. The other cool thing is that this information is being displayed in real time. It's not like it's being captured and then you have to replay it or do something manually to figure out what's going on. So this is giving you real-time information on what's happening. So for anybody that hasn't really seen a Panadapter, this is a piece of video that came off of a Flex radio. And so a Flex radio is purely an SDR type of radio. The top part of the display is your spectrum scope, and I don't know if my cursor is coming through or not, but the top part is showing what's going on as far as in real time. So across the horizontal plane, that's the frequency, so we can see kind of in the middle, there's a little band, so we're looking at 80 meters. So we're looking at 3.832 all the way to almost 4.0 on 80 meters. The area that's highlighted over on the left-hand side is the conversation that we're going to be listening to and see what's going on. The information below that, the lower half, is what's known as the waterfall. So this is kind of a running tally of what we heard or what we saw. So this is communicated again in the horizontal plane, our frequency that we're looking at, that we're capturing. The little area that's color coded is the RF energy for that, for what we're listening to. When we look at the blue part of the band, that is basically there's no RF energy. As we start seeing RF energy, the software starts color coding things. So we'll start seeing the green, and as green transitions to yellow, we get more energy. As it transitions to orange, where that means we have more energy, and as it gets into red, that means we really have a lot of RF energy there. So we can see on that spectrum, that 2.7 kilohertz spectrum for single sideband, we can see where that RF energy is. And we can kind of see for that conversation, the low frequency is on the right side of that little swath there. And the higher frequencies, the higher voice frequencies, is on the left side of that. So we can see that we're kind of getting a little bit more on the bassy side of some of that stuff. So let's see what this sounds like so you can see things in action. You can hear the voice, you can hear the guy talking, and you can see how that information is being captured and displayed. And think about what that information is, what is being communicated to you as far as the type of energy, audio energy that is being displayed there. So
maybe be able to show my sister some new areas that she's never seen before. She's been over in the East Coast for, oh man, at least 15 years, 15 to 20 years. Manhattan, Brooklyn, and New Jersey. I don't know. Other than my family being dysfunctional, I don't know what draws her to it, but she's stayed over there a long time. So, anyways, golly, Sal, I feel like I'm rambling. So we got a lot done today, and so tomorrow's going to be another good day, and I hope everybody had a good day themselves out there. So thanks for taking the net there, Eric, and hope you had a good day. W7EB, KG7KTP.
Okay, can anybody confirm if the audio came through?
Yeah, I can hear it. It's faint, but it's coming through.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, probably should have normalized that a little bit better. But anyway, you could see that in that swath there was several other conversations going on at the same time. So with that flex radio, you can go through there and look at, you can take in that swath of radios, I can go through there and pick off even multiple. I can listen to multiple conversations in that same band all at one point in time. But you kind of get the idea. You can see how that information is being conveyed. And let me get to the next screen here. So here's a little bit different display. Here I'm capturing all the way from 3.628 down at the bottom end of the phone band of 80 meters all the way up to 40, which is the top end. You can see all the different conversations that are going on in there. So the top part of it is the spectrum display. The bottom part is the waterfall, and you can see how the waterfall provides you some feedback as far as time. On some pieces of software, you can go through there and you can back up through that waterfall and to see what actually happened historically in there. It's pretty neat the way that works. So let's see what this stuff really means. So the spectrum display, that top part. So this displays that the amplitude of the signal in the vertical axis. So in other words, as you get more RF energy, you get more of a vertical peak that's being displayed. Frequency is displayed in the horizontal axis. In the waterfall, the bottom part of that display, so it displays the overall time in the overall signal, displays a signal over time in the vertical axis. The strength of the signal is color-coded with gradients of colors from blue to red. And different pieces of software, that's a general way that most everybody likes to see their stuff. There's different pieces of software. You can change it around to different color schemes, different intensities. You can calibrate it where that background, rather than blue, you can turn it black. And as soon as something gets above 3 dB, then it will start turning blue. And you can go through there and you can calibrate that display as far as what the gradients are on the different colors you have. So that whole process can get pretty darn sophisticated. So it allows you to actively see what's going on in a band or a slice of a band. It may not give you the whole band depending on how much it'll capture, but you can actively see what's going on in that band. So why is this really nice? And I mean, it's nice to see what's going on and nice to get some visual feedback, but what does it mean operationally? So let's say you're running the CQ Worldwide contest or the WPX contest or Field Day, where, in the times past, when we take a look at the entire phone segment of 20 meters, it's chock-a-block from end to end. There is nothing but RF all over that. So this allows you to take a look in one big look, and you can figure out, there's an open spot. There's a place I can nest. I can go through there and call CQ and try and see if I can attract some interest to me. It's really cool on pileups where you can, on some of these expeditions, if you look around and you see this big pileup and you say, what the heck's going on there? You can check a DS cluster, check a website, and you can find out, there's some rare expedition out there. So it's really easy to spot because you have 3,000 people all trying to talk at the same time. And you can tell by that spectrum scope that there's a whole lot of RF energy that doesn't have any structure to it because everybody's trying to yap at the same time. Typically on a pileup, you work split. So you have one frequency where the expedition is trying to transmit on, and you'll have another frequency that everybody is trying to take and get back to the expedition. Sometimes it's just one frequency out there. Sometimes it's a range of frequencies. So let's say they're running at, they have a range of 10 to 15 kilohertz that people can space themselves in. So this allows you with a Panadapter, you can look at that, you can see, there's not much overlap in this particular part of that 15 kilohertz spread out there. I'm going to stick myself there and I'm going to try and get back to that expedition. So it's really nice for pinpointing where to park yourself rather than on top of 3,000 other hams trying to call on exactly the same frequency. It's also really good to, I have a little slide coming up that allows you to figure out what mode, if the guy's running upper sideband, lower sideband. Even though like 80 meters, that's a lower sideband band, you still find guys out there running upper sideband. So when you see that, you know what that, you probably want to take and try upper sideband to try and either remind the guy that this is normally a lower sideband band or to carry on a conversation. It also helps you identify AM broadcast, RIDI, PSK, FT8, FT4 stuff. So with a Panadapter, it becomes so blindly obvious to figure out what kind of mode the guy is working. It is just, it takes the guesswork out of what's going on. So here's a couple, some things for software that you might want to consider. Is that over on the left side, the really inexpensive stuff, you have a whole host of RTL dongles. And these are little dongles that usually have a TV receiver in it. So typically they do higher frequencies, like for 6 meters on up through your VHF, UHF bands. There's some of those out there, those RTL dongles that are a little bit more expensive, which will actually capture the lower frequencies. But these things will run anywhere from $20 up to $200, depending on how wide of a band. There are some really sophisticated little RTL dongles that plug into your USB slot, and it can provide you a really high-end receiver out there. One of the things you can also do with these RTL dongles is like for older receivers that don't have, that's not an SDR radio, but maybe has a output that comes off of it for, off of one of the mixers. I'm trying to think of the right word for those. It's not coming with me, but you can tap into just before the IF stage, intermediate frequency amplifiers. You can tap into one of the IF stages of some of your older receivers and bring that into your RTL dongle and build yourself a really nice, on a laptop or a workstation, a really nice Panadapter that way. Lots and lots of people do that, and there's lots of information out there on the web that tells you and walks you through the different kinds of radios and how to build a Panadapter for an older radio. So the swath in the middle there is kind of the mid-range guys, and these are really good hardcore receivers like that. SDR Play, I think several guys in the club have SDR Play. There's an SDR Uno out there, which has a dual receiver in it. Again, those things usually connect up through a USB port and provides INQ signals for the software to process those things. And again, these guys here are going to run between $120 to $220, depending on the type of type of device that you're purchasing and its capabilities. And then clear over on the right, that's more your high-end stuff like your Flex radio, which is totally software defined and carries a pretty big price tag, but the capabilities are incredible in there. So if anybody wants kind of a little bit of list of different SDR hardware, that's, you know, some of it's inexpensive, some of it's a little bit more expensive, but send me an email. I'll send you, actually, I guess this will get posted eventually on the website, but you can send me an email and I can send it to you or wait till it gets posted up there. But I think that's a pretty good list of stuff up there for you to look at. So software, there is some really good software. You know, back 2-3 years ago when this stuff was emerging, the software was pretty darn dodgy out there. The stuff on the left side there, that's your SDR Play. That piece of software is really, really good. If you want to play with this kind of stuff, take a look at some of the YouTube videos out there to learn how to use it. That is an incredibly good piece of software. The guy in the middle, I know Power SDR, it's been around for a long time. It's quite powerful and quite good, a little limited to the types of hardware devices that'll work on. HD SDR has been around for a long time. It's probably better suited for your low end, like your little RTL dongles, but it is still a very capable piece of software, and it sounds quite nice. Sometimes some of the software, it's a little bit harsh on the ears, but both the SDR Uno and the SDR and HD SDR have come a long ways as far as making it nicer sounding audio. So again, here's a really good list of a lot of pieces of software out there. That list used to be, you know, 3 years ago, I think there was 3 items on here, and here you got a whole lot of them. The one marked in red, SDR console, that I believe that's still a free piece of software, but it is really, really powerful. That is a solid piece of software. The guy that did SDR console is the same guy that developed Ham Radio Deluxe, and he did a really, really good job on it. That's a powerful piece of software. So, Panadapters. Latest generation of transceivers almost all have built-in, or at least you can add on a Panadapter. That's really, really cool. And I didn't go through like the whole list of ICOM radios that have Panadapters listed, built into it. Yaesu, everybody is building in all the new pieces of hardware. Bigger displays in it that embellishes a really high quality Panadapters. Older transceivers, remember, even if it's an older one, it still has the ability to put on a Panadapter. This is just a screenshot of good old FT8. I think everybody in the club has all played around with FT8. This just has, it's nothing more than a Panadapter in there. Top part shows good old waterfall. It just things are turned around. Lower half of the screen shows your actual spectrum display. And you have just things you can tweak on that to make it brighter, dimmer, more robust, less robust, faster, slower, stuff like that. So here's a really cool little box that I really think is super nice, and that's the Raspberry or the RS Play. Come on, SDR Play. This is really just an SDR Play, and this version here is called the RSP Duo. This has 2 receivers, 2 independent receivers, so you can be looking at 2 entirely different bands at the same time. and capturing stuff. Very good sensitivity. Another neat thing that I know Drew can attest to is that you can buy from MFJ a little transmit receive switch that allows you to use this as a receiver and use something like an ICOM 706 or 7000. Just a moment. But you can take, I hate to use a worm, but you can use a lame transmitter with this little box and end up with a really high quality transceiver system. Really works nice. With this box, they also have software out there that can turn this box into a spectrum analyzer, and that's that display that I have in the lower left-hand corner. So this is running these the spectrum analyzer software on this box. So you have a mid-range spectrum analyzer. How cool can you get? High-end receiver that can work, can do two really good jobs. So let's look at some other good details. So I've kind of isolated things here. So this is, the top part's the spectrum scope. The bottom is the waterfall. So this is what a really good signal should look like. So you can see on the top part, the shadowed area there, that represents 2.7 kilohertz. You see it's well into it. You can see his modulation looks pretty darn good. The lower part in the waterfall, you can see the RF energy is pretty well spread across that entire 2.7 kilohertz. You can see he has a little fall off right in the lower third of it there, but generally speaking, this is a pretty well balanced signal that has good compression, that has the right amount of emphasis and de-emphasis, not too much bass, and plenty of treble. And I've done programs before on phonetics and how important, and also speech processing, and how important where the bass doesn't play a whole lot as far as communicating information, voice information, but the treble part really is very important on how that voice information is communicated. So here's another interesting signal. You can see this guy here. Yeah, you got a really heavy envelope there, but some of his RF is getting out of that 2.7 kilohertz there. He has a lot of treble up there, and you can see that he has a fair amount of fall off on the bass. But what's probably going on is that he has his mic gain turned up too high, and he's probably throwing in too much compression. If you look down at the waterfall part of it, you can see how much RF energy is in the top, in the high end, as far as the treble part of the voice spectrum. And you can also see that green stuff leaking out on the left and right side, that he's driving his amp or driving things too hard where he's starting to get some splatter. You can see on the guide just below that that's well behaved. Yeah, he's not well balanced as far as the energy up in his treble, but at least he's not getting outside of that 2.7 kilohertz area. So here's another interesting one. So we can look at this guy here, and you can see that, shoot, man, all he has is just in his energy is that lows and mid-range and nothing in the upper part. So he's totally missing out on the highs. So he is, when you listen to his voice, it's going to sound kind of muddy, because it's not going to have the treble in there that is used to communicate the syllable information there. And what you can see where that's, just treble. I mean, the upper frequencies just aren't there at all. Not good. So here's another dude that's off to the left, and he has a pretty well balanced signal, but dang it, he's just splattering, bleeding all over everything. So you can see from his transmitter there off to the right that splatter is drifting all the way to yet another conversation. That RF is getting into that conversation at 3.825. And that's not good. That a person like that needs to be told about, hey, you got a problem there. You're splattering too much. So in that little channel there, you should be able to slide in yet a whole nother conversation, but because of the splatter, it's not. You can't do that. So when you see on a spectrum analyzer conversation like this, that's good audio. That's the way it's supposed to look. Transmitter is working pretty decently. You're not getting too much. You're always going to get a little bit of splatter off the edge when you get things a little bit well balanced. It's nice if you didn't, but that's still within an acceptable range. So here's a couple additions. You kind of get the idea of some other things that you can do with that spectrum analyzer that helps you understand what you're listening to and how some parts of RF energy, if it's not well balanced, then you're not going to do a particularly good job of communicating things. So I really like it when I'm yakking away and I want to know, what does my audio sound like? Guys can do a recording if they have a spectrum or a Panadapter, capture what it looks like, screenshot, email it to me so I can see what the heck I look like. That's really a cool thing to know. Oh, and if anybody wonders, here at the house where I live, my normal noise floor on 80 meters in the morning is about a minus 120 dB. So I usually run between about 124 to about 118 dB, which is really a pretty good noise floor. It's not like I would like. I'd like it to be low, and we've talked about that. Whatever your noise floor, your local noise floor is, that is going to dictate how low of any RF, any station out there, that's going to dictate the lowest station that you're going to be able to receive. If you have a noise floor of a minus 100 dB, you're not going to be able to receive those S2, S3 stations out there. They're just going to be covered up. So a couple things to consider. Using a large monitor display for the Panadapter. That information on a Panadapter really helps if you put it on a larger display rather than a little 3 or 7 inch display. The bigger, a good sized display really makes that information pop, and it's really nice to see all the stuff, especially when you get into SDR software, all your knobs and all your controls and everything. You need lots of real estate to manage one of those SDR pieces of software. Okay, with multiple receivers, you can monitor multiple bands. Like I showed that little SDR Play Uno, multiple receivers in there. I can be looking at 20 meters, doing contacts on 20 meters, and also monitor 40 meters or 15 meters to see when 15 meters pops up. When I see something on 15 meters, I may want to go after it. That's one way that you can monitor multiple bands and be more productive in keeping track of what's happening on different bands. Another piece of software, as you start connecting this stuff together with software on your PC, with SDR radios, with amplifiers, rotor controllers, and all kinds of other things, and your logging software. There's a really nice product out there called OmniRig. This allows you to connect USB CAT controls between transceivers, SDR radios, PC logging programs, and whatever other pieces of hardware that you might have out there. So that's kind of a Swiss Army knife that rather than running a whole bunch of cables, you can run it all to your PC and use this little piece of software to connect everything together. Very, very, very nice piece of software. So let's wrap things up. So I started off by saying one of the key things for a Panadapter that is so, so important, lets you see what the receiver is hearing. It gives you a visual indication of what the heck you're looking at. Okay, it adds a significant dimension to your listening experience. So you can see and hear, and it gives you a feeling and you know what's going on. Really nice to tie that stuff together. I've nailed this down a number of times. Older transceivers, you can always get adapters. You can always figure out some way of adding on a Panadapter if you wanted to. Newer transceivers, it's always either built in or you buy an adapter or a product that bolts onto it. It really helps to identify the activity on a band, so you can take a look at a band and you can see everything going on there, and you can jump right into a station you want to go after. It helps you to find clear frequencies when you want to call CQ. Eliminates one of the things you always have to do when you find a clear frequency and you don't have a Panadapter. You always have to ask, is this frequency in use? That's proper protocol. And you need to do it at least twice. If you don't hear anything, then you figure you can go ahead and own that frequency or start calling CQ on it. With a Panadapter, you already can scroll backwards. You can see historically to see if that frequency is clear. It's great, absolutely a must for doing pileups and doing DXing. It helps you to sort out pileups, helps you to figure out where people are doing splits. If you can figure out a better place to wedge yourself in there, it'll give you that advantage. Helps you determine what kind of operating modes, upper sideband, AM, blah, blah, all this stuff like that. I didn't point out what an AM signal looks like. So any questions out there? And I'll bring it back to let anybody have any questions out there?
Do you have any shots of OmniRig?
No, I do not. And OmniRig is just a piece of software. So
Yeah.
it's a piece of software. No, I didn't do any shots
Okay.
on that. I tried to keep this focused here on just the Panadapter, but it's pretty straightforward. There's tons of help out there, YouTube videos, and it's a pretty rich environment out there for finding information. Any other questions?
Web SDRs. You didn't touch on internet mediated free receive only SDRs in terms of spoiling people for getting really loving waterfalls and using them as a receive side for their transmit, that
Yep.
sort of thing. I had a couple different points. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, there is a growing number of web SDRs out there that you can attach to, and then here's a good example. A lot of people live in the city, and a lot of people are poor hams. I feel really sorry for them. Like Bill's one of them. His background noise is an S9. You cannot be You can't do contesting, you can't do rag chewing. That so highly limits you on what you can do as far as being a ham. And I know more and more people are using web SDRs, where they'll connect to one over in Utah or Idaho or down in San Francisco or up at Seattle. And it allows you to take and listen in on a conversation, and you can go through there and you can still transmit at home. That's not an issue. The problem is hearing things. And you can use that web SDR to take and listen to what you're saying, and also to take it and connect into the conversation that's going on. So any other thing there, Ben?
Yeah. Let's see. So the two of them I'm familiar with are websdr.org is an index of SDRs, about 100 of them all over the world. The one I actually preferred was sdr.hu, Hotel Uniform. And I was just popping over to that while you were talking. And apparently that guy's shut down. Was having too much trouble staying ahead of the hackers. So that's too bad, because I actually liked his interface better. Let's see. Yeah. So, oh, you were talking about finding out what your signal sounds like. You're looking at on the waterfall display to see what your signal looks like. Yeah. If you're transmitting and you're watching one of the SDRs near you, you can see what your signal looks like if you're splattering or that sort of thing. And yeah, what you just
That's
said.
a very good point, and that's one that I totally missed there. Was
And then the other one was, yeah, if you're listening on a station that has better signal to noise, lower noise floor than at your location, you can transmit and then listen on an adjacent, better situated SDR. And a lot of people do that. Anyway, and it's free. The best news, it's free.
Yep. Thank you very much. Any other comments? Back to you there, Anthony. Thank you, everybody, for listening to me.
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. So unless anybody else has anything, so our next meeting will be next month in August. So stay tuned for another announcement. Hopefully, a little bit more notice than this morning, and that should be Monday, August 17th. Same bat time, same bat channel. So yeah, unless anybody else has anything else, I think that's all we got for tonight.
I have one question.
Sure.
Is anybody doing PSK on, say, 20 meters? I'm using FL Digi, and I had earlier I had been getting good signals and lots of stations, and now it just doesn't seem to be very much, and there's really broad signals that I can't figure out what they are.
Has this been happening over the last probably 2-3 weeks?
Yeah, probably at least.
I know over the last 2 weeks, things have really dropped off. I mean, there for a while, 6 meters was very active, 10 meters was active, but the last 2+ weeks, things have really dried up,
FD8 seems to be going like gangbusters, but just changed a little frequency to the PSK frequencies, and there's hardly anything.
Yeah, I'll make a prediction here. I don't know for absolutely sure, but I believe that signals, the last 2+ weeks, signals have dropped off enough where more people have been pushed into FT8, FT4. And so thereby you'll see higher activity on those, because it's been getting harder on RIDI and a PSK to make contacts, because FT8 beats RIDI and CW all to heck as far as the signal to noise ratio.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I think with that, thanks everybody for joining, and look forward to catching you next time, and maybe catch a couple of you guys on the air between now and then. So, Barry has a good night. Stay safe, and hope to see you next month.
Thank
Have a
you,
good one.
Anthony, Mike.
We'll see ya.